Hello everybody and welcome to Painting Dark Sword, episode 8. We're going to go with something that's more along the lines of the color theory episodes. What we'll do is, we got another Dark Sword figure here that's got some potential for some glowy things right here. I got these little flames, and something that I haven't really messed with in a long time is this. We got our fluorescent Magenta. I think the last time I pulled around with this was on my Tomb King's army 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that. So I thought I'd take this and some of the Reaper Clears because they just go together so well. Secret Weapon also has some nifty like purple heat and the blue heat. Maybe we'll play with those also. But we want to keep this as simple as possible. Now I've got a few other things we might throw out here. The engine rust, that might be for getting just almost more of a flesh tone. Right here you can see it looks like a flesh tone even though it says engine rust. We've got our usual maggot white and maiden flash, also Reaper, and we've got some liner paints. Maybe we'll break out some more, but for right now we've got red and blue liner. So these will be handy for getting some of the darks that you see in these reference pictures we've got here. So even in the purples there, I don't know if you can tell, but there's almost a little more of a greenish look in some of those purples. Now, again, Dark Sword miniatures, you can see here as I scroll around, there's a wide variety of themes, and a lot of these are based off of concept art by Larry Elmore, Parkinson, all kinds of different artists. So I recommend getting these things because boy, look at the detail on those. So fantastic. I also want to do maybe some quick marble on the base here because a lot of the marble that I've done tends to be usually like off-white or whatever. I thought here, what if we did some kind of bluish purple marble, something that's in the theme with this, something that complements this. I don't know if I want to go into transparent cloth on some of these things. We'll see what happens. But the important thing is to do the magenta stuff. Now, I believe that is, it's more of a headdress right there. So we'll see also too what kind of a magentas maybe we want to get here on this headdress. Maybe some complementary golds also. Which means we can bring in something like a clear yellow, and we'll mix it with the magenta and the fluorescent magenta, and we'll see what we get. Let's get started with our Dark Sword figure here. Now, you may wonder why I just hit it with this green Steiner Res primer. I just wanted to brush this on. I didn't want to do my usual airbrush primer where I create something more like, say, this. This will be another future Dark Sword video. Here you can see this is more of a light to dark type of transition on this. That's more of a standard thing that I do with the primer, but I just wanted to show you something a little bit different, and the fact that this is actually going to, in many ways, be an underpainting for all the magenta that's going to go on top. So over here we've got red and blue liner. We've got that magenta fluorescent. You can see this is the magenta clear paint. And as intense a color as that is, you can see how almost kind of dead it looks next to that magenta fluorescent. We've got, I think it's called bubblegum pink. There's a clear purple, and then we've got a maiden flesh, and that's the secret weapon engine rust. So we have to figure out, okay, what do we want to do with things like, say, the hair. We want these elements to be different shades of magenta, right? Why don't we start out here with a little bit of a semi-glaze on the hair. I'm going to go with a darker here. In some ways I want to have enough things that are dark, because otherwise you're not going to have much of a magenta glow, or yeah, not a whole bunch. So that seems to still be okay. That's here. I thought maybe that was more of a one of those things that you see like a wrap or whatever that's sort of wrapped into the braid, but they look like just braids. So we're gonna go with the darker here, like so. Not really worried about staying in lines or whatever. And you can see since I've gone slightly transparent with the liner paint, even some of that green still shows through just a touch. And now on the base, I'm going to take that clear red. Let's throw in a little bit of the magenta here. And I just want to get this down real quick before I do my usual thing with the marble. I think you've seen me done that. You've watched some of the, especially the Army Painter videos, you've seen me do marble before. But this is just to see how dark this should be and also how light this should be. So all this is about establishing that context that I talk about all the time. All the time. Wanting to know, alright, so if I go this dark over here, then that part of the dress might need to be light, vice versa. With that in there, so I think, don't necessarily want that to be light. I think I'm going to have to go darker with that. Again, I got these magenta things here. I want to have light cast. I also want to even have a darker skin tone. So let's go. Here we've got that clear magenta again. And I might put patterns on this, whatever, but I am actually going to go relatively dark here. But again, it's on the transparent side of things. Using my normal number 8 round craft brush. This is one that's obviously a little more pristine, not quite so beat up as some of the other ones. Now, let's shift this here. Let's go with some of the clear purple here. So we're going to get color that's, as far as value goes, similar to what we put down, but it's going to be a little bit different on that color wheel. So let's have this go here. Continue it back this way. And just how much of this... see, it's all one... That's all one piece, basically, but we are going to play around with this just a touch. Because it's one big old wrap, so let's play around with this a little bit. I'm going to grab some of that bubblegum pink or whatever there. And boom, we're going to do something like this. So it's not super different value-wise from what we just did. But I don't want this all to be the same color and or value all the way down. Let's throw a little more in there. So what this is doing, it's going to make a little bit of a grayed down purple color here. So yeah, this has more to do with what kind of contrast do I want with this marble over here. And I don't really care about lines or anything like that. It's not a big deal. I think I just did, what was that, right before New Year's Eve or whatever I did for the last post. It was talking about changing a miniature, or several miniatures have been painted differently, and they had to be changed more towards what the buyer wanted. And instead of stripping the whole thing down and starting from scratch or priming over it, all I did was I used what was there as a base. So see now, that same bubblegum pink mixed with the magenta is going to give me a different type of pink here. So this is one that's a little more warm. You can see how much more cooler and even grayed down that pink is. I think that might be gold there, but again, can't hurt to have this underpainting here. Now, I'm just going to mix this right in with some of that rust color. It's basically going to be establish a skin color there. But with that, sorry, again, wintertime, it's going to happen. I drank water, did all the things, cleared my throat 1,000 times. Until I start talking for a prolonged period of time, that's just going to happen. So, yeah, I'm just going to throw some skin tone here, but that little touch of green, that acts as my underpainting, because there's always a little touch of green in skin tones. And this time I sort of injected in there with primer. Now we've got our two little flames here, and this is where it really starts to get bright. It's, again, here, let's grab a chunk of this. See how thick that is? It's deceptive. Like I always say, it's super, super thick. You think, oh, wow, that's going to cover really good, and nope, doesn't really cover at all. Boy, I forgot just how intense this magenta stuff can be. Wow, look at that. And I didn't mix it with white or anything like that at this point. Just throwing that out there. Then we'll let it dry. Then we'll go back in. But wow, that is intense. And with the fluorescence, a little bit can go a long way. That's something to keep in mind. See what I'm doing here? It's practically a little bit of wet blending. Just letting some of that magenta get into the skin tone here a little bit. Here, let's drop a little bit of that on the hair, the side of the head. Maybe not quite so much. Oh, I see I forgot to put on a glove here. That's why things are kind of bouncing around. I need to let that dry here for just a second or two, just kind of set up for a little bit. But we'll just talk about the colors on the palette as we do this. I noticed all of a sudden I'm able to use my thumb as a thumb palette. So, again, look at how intense and rich that magenta color is compared to all of these other ones. As bright as and intense as they look, just so different. Alright, now let's see what happens. And we take a little touch of our maiden flesh and we'll combine that, and that makes it even more intense. Look at we'll compare that to that pink. One is super intense and the other one just doesn't have that intensity. And looks like I got it where you could see it. And now again it's more than just the contrast of light and dark. When you use this fluorescent stuff, it really, really magnifies that saturation level like nothing else out there. You just can't compare. There really is, no way to compare the saturation potential. Here, let's Reflect a little touch here in the face, and we can do this because we made that at least a little bit dark enough. It's not super dark or anything like that. Now colors, or paint, I should say, at this time of year around here is going to just dry faster. That's what it does. It's gotten cold again, so the heater goes off, stays on for a while, and it just dries out the air. You live somewhere where it's warm and wet, your paint's going to have a very different drying time. It can affect your glazing for sure. Can certainly affect your wet into wet blending. So here, just all I'm trying to do is ascertain where do we want this glow to be. So I got the little ruffles here on the dress. Well, probably lose most of that there. I don't know if I want these to be quite so intense. I don't want to have to necessarily go all the way down to the floor with that glow. Maybe we do. I don't know. It's just magic. You know, just find a little bit of that over here. On the side of the head, yeah. Yeah, I can see that getting some. I think what happens to a lot of folks when they haven't really done too much of the object source lighting, they run into some of the things we ran into, which is or at least your approach is you paint the whole figure like you almost normally would. Say with no glowing stuff, whatever. And after you've spent hours, days, however long, painting the figure, all the rest of it, then you go to do the glowing effect, and most people get kind of worried. They don't want to mess things up. So they either go really light, and I don't mean light as in value light. I mean they skimp on the glowing effect because they don't want to mess up everything they've been working on for hours. Here, I've been working on this for 15 minutes. What could we possibly have done in 15 minutes that couldn't be recovered or brought back? I have to say I'm really liking this magenta fluorescent. Boy, oh boy, it's been, like I said, it's been close to 5 years. Good grief, maybe more. Maybe almost more like 6 years since I've actually had a chance to play with the fluorescent magenta. So that's really fun. Yeah, I'm having some fun with this. I guess maybe that's the other reason I wanted to mess around with this, is I haven't really done a color theory thing that talks about stuff like magenta. It's been reds, greens, blues, even did gray. I've done, I think I've put most, if not all, of the color theory videos up there for folks to see on the Patreon page. There we go. Let's keep going with this. Now eventually, I can add some white to this to really lighten it up, because it's actually not its full level of lightness yet. We're still doing that. And you can see that I'm focusing the lighter colors on those origin points, because otherwise you're not really going to have a glow, you're just going to have a color there. And that's the other reason I dropped in some of those skin tones first. I wanted to see, well, just how dark do those skin tones have to be to make this glow show up. And I think I want to have a decent amount of darks in the skin tone. I don't want it to be the normal sort of Caucasian type skin. Maybe have it be a little bit more tan, ruddy, whatever. I know I did one video on tan or ruddy flesh tones. Maybe that's one that I can also put up for the patrons there. So here, let's do a few touches here. So see, look at how that was originally such a bright or intense purple color, and now it just looks almost gray by comparison with all of this really bright color that we've been adding. And we can make it even brighter still. And again, there has been no white added to this yet whatsoever. So it doesn't take terribly long to establish a glow. Not terribly involved. And that'll be altered a little bit here and there. So let's go the opposite way with our flames here. So that's clear red, or clear magenta, sorry, mixed in with the fluorescent magenta. And say we draw it over the top. And now, by comparison, the lights in our flames get that much lighter because there's, again, that context. If you just keep adding light, 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 and don't get anything that's even a middle tone, much less a dark, you can go pure white if you want. It's not going to make any difference. So now, over here, what I'm going to do is actually do a little bit of a glaze with that. So what it'll do is, ironically enough, it'll enhance my glow. It's going to darken it. But what it's doing is how it's changing the intensity here. So see how we've got the glow it's there. See, there's a magenta. This is the advantage of the clear paint and the fluorescent working together. This is one or the other on their own doesn't quite do it. It's the two combined together. So see, now I have this little bit of a light area here, but it gets dark. There's basically some transition now. And we're going to do that also here. Touch on the hair. And by doing it at this early stage, if we say, oh boy, that's just too much, gotta tone it down, it's no problem to tone it down from here. Again, we haven't invested loads and loads of time into this. Making an adjustment, not gonna hurt anybody. So let's just, yeah, we need some here. It's almost like it's going to be a shadow on the face there. And we're going to take, good, there's a little bit of red liner. So that's going to darken it down just a pinch. What do we got here? And, oh, I see I need to get down in there. It's a little bit of a glaze. I'm going to go here to get some definition on these, because I think people also think that object source lighting is all about making things lighter. But again, without shadows, you've got no, you don't have a glow without those shadows. You need those shadows. I'm going to throw a little bit of purple in here. And I'm going to get a few darks on the hair. See how that looks basically brown at this point? Looks brown because now we've started to add so much more intense color. But remember what we did was we took red liner and just put it over the top of that green. Well, the green primer, basically. That was enough, just enough green. What happens when you mix green and red? You get brown. That was the whole purpose behind that. So here we're taking some of that clear purple. Now we're going to go over the top of this. Like so. We're going to put a little more water into that glaze, lessen it a little bit. So we've got a pretty decent context there now. We've got some differential. See, we need almost like a shadow here. Look at the difference that makes. So that glow becomes that much more intense. And look at those two flames in her hand. It just kind of looks like it's boiling there. And that magenta there, it's a warmer magenta, so what I need to do is start to cool things down here a touch, and that is something I can do by just taking some of the straight up clear purple, going over this here. Let's take some of that away. So yeah, if you... Actually, I'm tempted to do it. Well, I'm not going to do it right now. But if you were to just rewind this thing, so we're at, what, 24 minutes? Well, not including the opening segment. But you go back, I don't know, 15 minutes ago, what this thing looked like, compared to what it looks like now, you'd find a substantial difference. It all looked very light. What have we been doing? We've been adding some glazes back into this, finding them where we need them. And we can go vice versa. We can go back in and add some midtones and highlights. No reason why we can't. I am going to throw in this is just a clear purple. I'm just throwing that in there to establish. So maybe that's not going to be gold. Maybe that's got to be darker. We'll see. Again, it's something I could definitely change as we go along here. No problem. So I think we've got this settled in pretty good. We know what we want. We've got that figured out. We've got a glow fairly well established here. So what I'll do next is I let these colors kind of set. That's something you have to think about with when you're using the fluorescent paints. You saw how thick that was. Well, they can sometimes take a little while to dry and set fully, so you want to give them time to do that. So what we'll do is we'll mess around with our base here. See, look at now. This is just the, again, that's just a fluorescent color. Look at the difference that makes right there. Let's just hit some of this on here. It's on the brush. I'm just basically emptying out my brush. Look at the difference that makes, and it's, what was it that I kind of coined the last time I did this? It's a dry glaze. Something you can do when you have a really transparent color like this. So what we're going to do is do the marble, and then maybe a little bit with the skin tones also. So as promised, we're going to get into this base here with the marble effects and probably do some stuff on the skin too. So marble effects, let's see what we've got here in terms of the clear purple. Let's throw a little bit more of that out there. I'm going to throw some of that out. And I've got, what is this, the ghostly moss. It's kind of a seafoam green, a little more towards the blue. Just have a touch of that. A little bit. It's also something that I want to have in this area too, eventually. So that's going to be for my marble color. So I'm just doing a little adjustment on the headset. That's just trying to get away from some of these shadows here. I'm going to move some lights around. And there we go. So we're just changing the tone of the base area there. Here, let's get some darker purple on this. Again, it's the clear purple. Alright, got my blue liner over here. I'm going to throw some more of the clear purple out there, just so we got some. That's better. And I'm just going to do a little line around the base here. That's normally black. Maybe it's black after this is done, but I just want to mark where that's going to be. Give it a little more hint of purple there. And once that is done, all of a sudden that purple doesn't look so light anymore. And since it's a little bit, you see a little bit of moisture left in there. Let's find a good spot. Let's see, we're going to take this and we're going to just twist that brush around. Do this, twist that brush around. Wow, that's still a little bit wet. We're going to throw a little bit of our turquoise color in there. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be darker than the dress there to get a little bit of contrast. There we're just doing it via the color. It's almost looking like a grayish blue by comparison. And here we'll just then let those two mix together. Same thing here. And do the same thing here. Just trying to turn that so you can see it and I can still see it. But then I'm leaving a little bit of my magenta color that I sort of infused there, because marble's sort of a reflective surface anyway, so why not let some of that stay there. I'm going to grab just a little touch of that pink there as I try to lighten this a touch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab myself a somewhat finer brush for this. Sometimes the brushes get a little more beat up than I think they are. There we go. And what I'm going to do is see a few veins of the marble. Let's have one that's a little bit lighter here. Like so. And what I try sometimes to do is just follow what's already there. Sometimes the random patterns that just doing those brush strokes, and that creates that little nice thing for me to work off. If it's going to be the same thing here, let's see, we work off of that. And we're just going to continue that over some of these other areas. See, we can do something like this where we kind of connect those together. You can see how generally I try to create a pattern that flows across the whole base. You can also see how much more muted this is than the figure itself, because as much as we love our basing, it is about the figure. So the base should not overpower the figure. I've seen it happen. I've seen freehand overpower the figure. I've seen a lot of things overpower a miniature. Because in some ways, they want to show off as many skills as they can on one thing, and that's understandable. But it's not always the best plan. Sometimes the figure has to be the star of the show. And that means just letting it do its own thing. Now there's other figures where maybe it's not the niftiest sculpt in the world, or it's not the cleanest cast or whatever, and sometimes by painting we cover up some of those flaws. And see how we've got a nice little pattern that's starting to work its way in. Now I'm going to use a little bit of that maiden flesh, because we're going to be using some of that on the skin tone, so we should probably also have it on our base. And this is where I just bring out a few of these veins to make those a little lighter than others. This one is going to be one of those. Right here. Lighten that one up just a touch. Alright. And let's see what we've got here. Skin tone wise, I'm going to throw a little more of this is again the secret weapon engine rust. Let's get some of that out there. And to keep it a little bit darker, you can see I took some of our clear purple mix there. And just going to work some of that into the face here. Work some of that into the arms. So this is where you start to take or tone down some of the glowing effect. Alright, here, same thing. See, that's just a little too much. So we are going to tone that down a little bit. And you can see how dark, where am I at here on the palette? See how much darker that is. It's obviously not any type of a highlight color. It's barely a middle tone at that. So yeah, now that that's pretty much dry, and you can see it. Yeah, I don't want to go any further on that marble. I can go the other way. Here, let's grab a little bit of the blue liner and some of that clear purple. Let's go the other way around here. And we can do some with darks. And the same thing here. We'll play with that just a touch here. Maybe a little bit there. Because sometimes it's nice to have not always just the lighter veins, but some areas of dark too. Like this over here. Maybe something over here too. And I'm gonna actually, let's see what happens with the, and have some fun with some of the clear magenta and the blue liner. Let's see what we get from that. Because I want to throw in some, while we're here, I'll throw in some shadows here. Maybe a few on the hair in places. Maybe a couple down here. Just while I'm thinking about it. Not too much. Not too much. Just a little bit. And then, while I've got that, here's my magenta here. I'm going to mix that in with my red, or my skin color there. Going for a little bit of shadow on the face. Right, I'm even gonna throw a touch of that on the hair. It's all about color unity also. It's another big deal. Another thing we want to be aware of. So let's see just how light we actually want to get. How light do we want to get on that skin tone? Let's see. Looks like I got some maiden flesh left still. Now you can see just how much lighter that is. And I'm gonna get it where you can see it, and I can too. Gonna have to start to figure out just where my eyes are, but see how all of that darker glaze that I put in there, it essentially outlines the eyes for me. Don't really like to use that term necessarily, but that's kind of what it's doing. And again, little on our skin color here. These will be tough for you to see some of this, so again, sometimes it's a little too difficult to get the paintbrush at a specific angle or whatever, and sometimes I just don't do that section. At least not on camera. Alright. We'll step up this a little more in terms of our light. But again, if I get too light on the face, what's going to happen? Our glow is going to lose some of its glow because now there's going to be so much light in other places. So let's get in here. And I also want to hit some of these bracelets. Let's see, what do we want to do under the chin? We need a little more dark. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, we are going to grab, here it is. This is just a little bit of white here because I do want to put in something for the eyes. Here, I think you can just about see that. That makes those a little brighter. And while I've got it, let's see, I'm going to throw a touch of my fluorescent paint out there. It does not take much. Again, a little bit's going to go a long way. And this is really going to change. See how white makes that a very different pink than, say, the Maiden Flesh did. But it should give it an extra touch of intensity. So let's drop in a little bit here. A few lights along here, and then we need that especially. The reason I was mixing this up is for things like the skin. Definitely need some light along here. And I'm just gonna, I see there's a kind of a necklace thing there. I just want to mark that real quick while I got it. And let's drop a few other little highlights here and there. So you can see we have not been working on this for hours and hours and hours, slaving away at this. We've tried to manage that glow, get it to be apparent but not overpowering. So let's see if I can line this up for you here. So see how the face right there is not being affected by the flame in the right hand here. So that's why that's more and basically a shadow, and that's why these are picking up more of those highlights. Now I wonder, I may have with me here, I can hear them rattling around in my pocket. Aha. So this is a neat little trick here. So these are little flashlights. I think you can sort of see there's a light on. But let's grab one that doesn't have... this is a good one here. So see how... Now I've got so many lights on. This also can tell you where that glow might be. So yeah, this is not the brightest light in the world. I also have another light here. Let's see what this one's going to do. If this is any brighter. Yeah, not too much bright. I have to turn off all my lights for you to see that. But shining a little flashlight on your figure, and those lights that I was showing you, the those little hand lights like that. I think they came in like red and green and white and yellow and blue. That was the reason I brought those up. It's just a little flashlight is just a flashlight, but lights that have a color to them, now you can almost see, well, okay, yeah, that's how light I want it to be, but it also is, that's the color I want it to be. So yeah, if you can find those, I just got them on Amazon. They were just little tiny party lights, and they cost, I don't know, $3 for a whole big batch of them or something like that. So they are not expensive at all. They've actually come in handy as tiny little flashlights. Sometimes when you just don't want to turn on a light or whatever, and it's in the middle of the night and you're doing whatever. Well, if you're me, you're always seemingly doing stuff in the middle of the night. Like this. Alright. Just going to try and reestablish the upper lip here and a little shadow on the lower lip. I just wanted that to be a little bit more pronounced than I had it. And that's the nifty thing about Dark Sword figures, is that they really do have a lot of detail. So it makes it that much easier, especially when you're, say, painting faces. It's the reason why I chose them for a lot of these demonstrations here. Alright, I don't want to get too wild and crazy here with highlights and such. Yeah, let's get a little more light there. Now, I'm going to throw out some of the red liner here. You got to find that. There it is. Haven't had this out here in a while. Try and do some eyeballs here. Now, I have to sometimes basically hold my breath while I do this. So if you don't hear me talking, that's why you don't hear it. It's not like there's this problem with your sound. So let's turn this around where you can see it. The key thing is to attach the eye to that upper eyelid. So let's thin this down just a touch. That's why I like the liner paints, is that you can thin those suckers down, but they still have some oomph. And there's the other eye. So the idea is I want her kind of looking off to the right-hand side. That's something you'll have to determine with the eyes, because that can make a big difference. If they're always just staring straight ahead, that just kind of gets a little boring. There's something dramatic about them looking off in some other direction than just straight ahead. And it doesn't matter what the figure is. I've had it with the bolt action figures, with whatever. There's just something about a figure that's looking off. It's almost like they're looking at something that's kind of off camera in a way. And there's just something more mysterious about that. If they're looking right at you, I guess, they can still have some. It can still be interesting. But I guess if it's looking away from you off to the side, then you just wonder, what's that? What are they looking at over there? What's over there? Just something to think about. Now let's see if I can do a bit of eyebrow action here. Again, trying to make this where you can see it and I can still work on it. The eyebrows can also make a big difference in the expression. Now, if you have an eyebrow that's turned up or an eyebrow that's more furrowed looking, it completely changes the expression of that figure. Let's see, we've got a little bit of our pink left here. We'll mix it with our red liner. Throw some of that here. But now I'm going to get back to some of my clear magenta. I'm going to throw some more maiden flesh out here. You notice that we haven't gone to just, say, the maiden flesh color. Well, I want some clear purple. That's the other thing I was looking for. Yeah, right there. I'm going to see what happens with, here we go, clear purple and the maiden flesh, because that's something I'm going to do on the dress also. What I'm trying to do is under here, get a little separation. Yeah. See, that's really key, because what it does is it separates that eye lid from the eye socket, but it's not super pronounced. And because we're using this basically toned down purple color, which is, and I just want to show you real quick, this is the area where I intended to use that right in here. So we'll just, I know this wasn't listed as one of the things that we were doing on this step, but sometimes you have to go out of sequence on things. So I just wanted you to see that's why I wanted to have some of that up here as well. And a little touch of that here. And I'm going to throw a little bit of that on our skin tone here as a bit of a shadow. Partially because that's going to, in some ways, reflect what we did on the base down here. Because, as you can see, that's works very nicely also on our base. Let's do a little right there. Gonna get some more of that clear purple. Yeah, so we're going to be doing the same thing here. This is more just a little bit of a check for the next segment, so that's what I'm going to be doing there. But back to our skin color here, like so. So what this is starting to do is give us a little bit of a shadow on our skin color here, but it's a shadow that makes a little bit of sense, you know, for the colors that are around it. So what we're going to do is we'll now get into the dress area here, because remember, we want to work evenly on this. We don't want to just do the skin tone and so I finished that completely and now have to go somewhere else. So what we're going to do is just finish up with a few more of these shadows here, and then once we get the brightest colors on the dress, then we know Okay, how much lighter do we want to go on that skin tone? Because, okay, we grab a little bit of our maiden flesh here. Let's get that on screen where you can see it. And you'll see what a difference a little tiny bit of that makes. Just does not take very much. Yeah, so we don't want to overdo it with our highlights here. So, okay, we'll get into our next stage, and that's going to be maybe adding some gold on some of these things, and especially we're going to work this part of the dress here and work in some more purples. So we've put a few more colors out onto the palette again. We've got the clear purple, the clear magenta, got the maggot white out here, and that bubblegum pink. The idea is I want to have a little bit more of a bluish effect on the clear purple, and we're going to start down here, and we're going to work some of this in. I don't want to completely annihilate all these shadows that I put in here, but what I want to do also is, see, we're going to soften this a little bit here. So we've got a blinking light over here, so I just had to mess around with that. Where's my, here it is. And we'll do that on this side too. And just like some of the previous videos, especially if you've been watching the Dark Sword ones and you saw all the emphasis on greens, that you think, okay, it's purple, but boy, purples, magentas, it's darn near blue, it's darn near red, and there's a full range of colors to be had in just what would be considered purple or just magenta. There's a lot more you can do in there. That's, see, all of those early darks that we had. Now we don't want to wipe that out too much, but I also want to have a little bit of that here where the magenta is. Just a touch of it. Okay, looks like you can see that. And that is why I've got my clear magenta out here, so that I don't, again, I don't want to lose my magenta glow. Here, let's turn this around here so we can do a little bit of, I like to call this directional brush strokes, and that is you're basically working with the direction that the sculptor made, with the sculpting tool, because these are done, well, now not all of them, I suppose, but for the most part, I think the Dark Sword sculpts they're done in that traditional way, not necessarily with the ZBrush and the digital stuff, the digital sculpting. Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all, but if you've painted enough traditional sculpts and then done the digital stuff, you know there's a difference. There's bound to be, because one is being sculpted by hand and the other is not. There's just going to be a difference. It's not a good or bad difference, it's just a difference. So this, you can see the more of the clear purple is in here. You get a more You get a warmer result. And I know it, you think warmer is orange or at least red, but at this point, even a purple has a warmer side or a cooler side. And by using the maggot white to lighten things, we've given that more of a cool side. Let's see, as we rotate this around, see now that starts to get much more intense. That's why we've got the bubble gum here to... Sorry, there's just some junk on the palette here. So let's get in here and work on our dress portion. And if I feel the need, I can always go in and grab my fluorescent magenta. But as you've heard me say a million times just in this video, a little of that goes a super long way. So we're gonna keep that particular arrow in the quiver until we really absolutely gotta have it. And again, some of this is just that original, what looked almost like dry brushing. Obviously it was not dry brushing. And here we can tone down some of that glow, or vice versa. See, we can strengthen it a little bit now in some places where we know we want it. Just making sure you can see that. That was one place I knew I wanted some of that. And then we go back to where it's a little less pronounced. And as always, how much refinement you want to do on a given piece is certainly all up to you. You could spend 10 more hours on this. Some folks might have already called it done before we started to do this step here. So it's whatever it is that you're looking to get out of it. I guess I always mention that because even today on some of the blog posts and other things, people say, well, I could never do that. So they just sort of give up completely instead of saying, well, I can't do quite that much, but maybe I can do most of that. And if I keep practicing and learning and just modifying my approach, well, maybe I can do more of that, a little more each time. One of the reasons I want to keep this somewhat towards the bluish side down here is we've got so much of the blue in our marble color there. Yeah, let's see what we've got. I also don't want to make that mistake that I talk about all the time of highlighting, say, the bottom edge of this dress equally with what we've got on the top part of it, where it's closer to the light. So I'm just doing a few things there. Now let's see if I can't. I'm gonna go back in. Got a little bit of that. Was that ghostly whatever? Ghostly moss. Gonna mix some of that in with my purple color here. And now it's that much more I guess you could say it's grayed down, but it's certainly more on the bluish side. And just trying to work in a couple of more bluish bits here on that dress, even in areas where I've got the magenta. So see, it kind of helps get a little extra contrast there, just by virtue of being a more bluish color. And I also wanted some back here, because if it's all just purple, it will, I don't want to say it'll look boring, but they'll look at it once or twice, and the viewer kind of says, well, yeah, lots of purple, lots of magenta, and they sort of move on, and that's it. But if they say, well, man, what's that extra? Wow, there's blue in there. That little bit of a surprise, visual surprise, I like to call those. It'll just get people to maybe take a longer look at your stuff. It's never a bad thing. And especially if it's a contest entry or whatever. And most folks know that I just stopped doing the contest stuff a while back. Just it's never really my thing to begin with. And it would be actually very difficult for me to do all of the tutorial stuff that I do and still try and mess around with contest stuff. So I think it would be more beneficial to more people if I just focused on this. But if you want to please judges, and I know I have done that many times myself, you have to give them a reason to want to look at your piece more too. So here's a little more of that fluorescent stuff out there, the fluorescent magenta. Because those judges, again, that's if you're into that sort of thing, they have to look at hundreds and hundreds of miniatures in a matter of hours. And what's going to keep their eye on yours a fraction of a second longer is if you have, I mean, look at the huge range. Look at this. We'll put that next to that. So let's make that bigger. So you can't, well, yeah, you can't see my brush here. So as I take this intense pink here and put it next to that, look at how different that is. If we were to turn this screen, basically kill all of the color, take all the saturation out of it, what you would probably see there is the same color of gray, or the same value of gray. But we've got temperature and color intensity on our side here. So again, this is that thing that's gonna hopefully keep that judge maybe is gonna step away from yours, going, oh, wait a minute, what's that? Wait a minute, look at all the differences here. You have to figure they may be looking at the exact same miniature as yours. Because unless you're sculpting a miniature yourself, somebody else may have decided to paint the same nifty bust or figure or whatever. And this applies to busts too, or large scale figures, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, and if you want to catch that judge's eye, you need to give them something more than just perfectly shaded purple. You need to give them something else in that purple. Maybe even you sneak some greens in there. And I know that sounds crazy. That probably sounds really crazy. But that is the kind of thing you need to do. And you can do all the blending you want. But in the end, something that's perfectly blended versus something that is going to draw them in, at least for me, there's not that perfect blending is wrong or anything like that, but I wanted to see someone that challenged themselves. And to me, there is more challenge in attempting to make the more interesting color transitions rather than just blending that one color perfectly. Because, I mean, if all you're interested in is the blends, well, it could just be a black and white miniature, or one of those almost like film noir type figures, but even that would have color to it. So sorry to go off on my rant there. It wasn't so much as a rant, but just a little bit of advice. Especially if you're thinking contests, because just having done that and know how long of an evening that becomes, you have to consider, well, I know I've had to judge things till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning after a very long, full day of, say, teaching classes or doing whatever. At that point, your eyes are ready to just be shut. And that's why I've tried to sneak in, see how there's blue and red against each other there practically. That's all part of the plan. Here, let's get some of this in here. Where are we at? There we are. So we've got this, but now I don't want to call it a regular highlight, but I need a non-magenta highlight here to show that the ambient light of the room or whatever is still influencing the figure. So just a few of those. Not so much here since a lot of this is in shadow. Let's see what we've got here. So we're going to need a few. Good, we still got some of our magenta out here, and let's mix some of the maggot white with that. Oh, let's see. Yep, now you can see it. Gonna do some here. A little bit of a light there. Just a few here and there. Diminishing as it goes down towards the floor. And I need something here and here. See that? Just it's almost like a little bit of a candle flicker there on the dress itself. Oh, I think I need some back here. On the hair and on the headdress here. Little touch more on this side too. And something right here. And then that's the clear magenta. Just trying to tie some of that together. Now I promised some stuff where we try to make some gold. Let's just throw this clear yellow out here and not throw too much more. Just trying to keep this into a certain color range. Look at that. That's just with the junk that's in the brush. We have a nifty orange in no time. Boom, down here. And we'll just do a few things like so. Back into the yellow now. Pick up this top edge. And there's a little bit of a fringe under that. Oh, what the heck, I might try to throw a little bit of gold color here on her crown type thing. Headdress, crown, whatever. I apologize for not knowing the names of the different figures. That's just kind of bound to happen, because once these things get prepped, I can't keep the little labels, and I prep a lot of figures all at the same time, as in hundreds, so writing down the names is not going to do much good. So you're kind of on your own there for finding the names of the figures. Here, let's take a little bit of that clear yellow, clear purple together. Make a couple of brush strokes here to kind of define these few areas from each other. And while I still got some of the purple out here. I need some light here. I've been working on this, and all the while not really realizing that I needed to get some more light over here. And down here. Just a touch more, that's all. And let's see. Maybe I want to add some more shadows in there, but we'll think about that later. I don't have to do that right at this moment. Yep, this needs a little bit of light here, so just a touch of that. Alright, there is enough. And so I've got that sort of grayish purple color, and guess what? That's going to be our little bit of reflected light on our skin over here. Because again, that's the marble color. See, that's that color surprise. We've got warm, warm, warm everywhere. And now we just give them a little bit of a hint of this cooler color. Skin just gets one more extra dimension to it. Here, let's try and get some of that down here. Not a lot, just a little. Because what makes a surface seem round is reflected light. I know some people have helped them with their in 2D art, and it's another one of those things where they could shade things really well. And just really elaborate, really nice shading. And then they would wonder why the object didn't look, I say, it just doesn't look real, it doesn't look three-dimensional. It's because they had fantastic shading, and once they added just the tiniest little touch of reflected light to it, all of a sudden that same thing transformed. It looked so three-dimensional because now it had that little touch of reflected light in the shadow area. And you can see how hard was it to just add a little bit of that here, and a little bit here by this elbow. That's all it took. And because we had set up so much of it earlier, again, that's what keeps it from being a lot of extra work. Yeah, let's use the yellow and purple to make ourselves a bit of a brown here. A brown highlight, I guess you would say, for maybe a little bit of the hair. Because we don't want it all just to be magenta highlights. Just trying to get a little bit of difference here. Like so. In a few places. And what's the thing that we haven't touched at all yet? We really haven't messed very much with white at all. Or so we save that for the end, like usual. And, geez, I didn't even need that much out there. Not at all. But I'm going to mix a little bit of that with the yellow. And we'll drop in a few of our bright highlights like that. Just a few. Do it on the bracelets here. See how that gives that, and it's just this little line of them here. Not everywhere, it's just a little line right there. Just kind of going down in succession. Do that on this side too. So one thing that always kind of happens when I do the fluorescent paints, you're gonna have a little bit of camera kind of going a little crazy trying to negotiate that all that intensity of color. So here we're gonna see if we can't add one last, and it may not even show up on camera because it's just going to be so intense. Just a little more in the base area of our magenta flames here. So you can really, I think, see it once we turn it around and you see the front part of them. And just gonna, while I've got this, maybe enhance a few of the magenta light being cast on the rest of the figure here. Yeah, I'll keep going with this and maybe add a little touch here and here. Maybe even on the necklace chain, just a part of it. Maybe here on the shoulder. And this is the refinement that we talk about so often, where you could spend a lot of time going in and softening some edges. You know, you want those smoother blends. That's You know, you can spend some of your extra time doing that. Now that, I guess the key is to make sure you just don't overwork something, because another one of the sayings we use here is the enemy of good is always better. So many times people say, I'm just going to do this one last little thing, and it leads to disaster. And so many times I see people, they were just about done with something. Next thing you know, they've stripped the whole thing. And it's because they just kind of wanted to get that last little whatever in. Sometimes you just have to leave that off. Sometimes it's better just to leave things as they were. And again, I'm just, in some places, maybe I'm going to paint in a fold in the fabric, maybe that's not there. Just because in the context of, now that I've added all these extra light sources, sometimes doing that helps to define your light sources. So here is purple liner again. And I need to get a little more definition on these bracelets here, one from the next. Need to get a little separation there. See if we can do it on this side. Again, I've got to rotate it towards me here because I can't get the brush on it otherwise. So if I have another one of these, of this specific figure, I'll try and do maybe a oil painting version of it. But I don't necessarily want to, every single figure, always have an oil painting version of it. So sometimes, now there's just a dark sword figure that I really, really like, and I would actually just like to paint. Or it's one, maybe that has more of a non-metallic thing, so I might choose one that has more armor on it, and we can do that. And I think what I've really tried to do here is find some interesting colors to feature for you. So let's get a little more mid-tone purple in here, and this is more along the lines of the straight up clear purple, so a little warmer. And you can see it, you can really start to see some of those hints of blue emerge there in the purple. And since the green was not that long ago, I'm sure some of you will even remember that the blue worked its way into the green an awful lot. To the eye, it just registered all as green. And then when you got closer, you could, well, you were watching me paint it, you knew that there was blue going in there. And I'm going to grab a little of my red liner if I can find some of that. Let's see if I can, here it is. So let's try and get some definition on a few things here, because that's a nice dark there. And I'll just define a few of the right along here. So I didn't do anything fancy with this base. She was actually on, I like to call them broccoli bases. And what I ended up doing was putting her on a base that had a little bit of a, I don't know what I want to call it, a shallow area to it. So she was sort of sunk in there. And then I used green stuff to just fill in that area right up to where the dress was. Because I knew if I could do a little marble demo for you, that's a nice little bonus. There's other types of marble. I know on the blog I've got a few articles on some really different types of marble. That actually saw it on a trip to the cemetery. There's a cemetery around here where you've got a lot of the mausoleums, and they're made out of marble, and just some of that marble was really, really different. Never seen anything like it before. So now we're going in with some more shadows here where we feel we need them. That's the red liner and the purple, the clear purple paint. So again, just where I think I need some shadows under here. Because we work really fast in the beginning, and you can see now I still manage to rotate around though. I don't let myself just get bogged down into one area. You know, as this cheekbone has been left much darker than say this one, because the light's actually hitting this one because she's turned this way. That's why I had her eyes looking this way. Whereas here, this piece catches that light and then effectively casts a shadow here. So then we have to kind of let the ambient light do the rest of the shading on her face, so to speak. This should give you a pretty good sense of what you can do with one more of the fluorescent paints. I think the one that I haven't really used very much in videos is the fluorescent blue. We've certainly used the orange and the green. We've really used the green a lot. And we've used the orange to make flame, but as most people don't really think of magenta flames. I know I haven't thought of magenta flames for the longest time. And I'm really glad I did this. That's for sure. And I'll have to just remind myself to do this this magenta type stuff on other figures. Here, I'm just going to try and get a little more separation in between these sections of the bracelets here. I think I still have the white still alive here. Yeah, and there's a little bit of the yellow. And I can do that same thing where I try and make a little line of highlights here. Like that, just a little row of highlights. Trying to do the same thing over here. Just like so. I'm actually going to throw a little bit of my maiden flashback out there. Ooh, and some of the secret weapon. Skin tone while I've got it. Because this is an area where I can maybe smooth some things out. Just a touch right there, not a lot. And if I mix in some of my purple with that, I've got again a shadow color. So yeah, look at, we've got this almost pink magenta. Well, again, the color. Here, let's tone down the color intensity a bit. So let's do this. Yeah, let's try this. I haven't done this. So we've basically wiped out all the color intensity. So you can see we still have flames here. Boy, I might have to do this on every single one. This is neat. So we still have definition, the base. There's still separation from the dress. Oh yeah, I should do this way more often. That's fun. That is really fun. Look at that. So you still have all of the lights and shadows, but you can see how there's a little bit lighter on that side of the face. That is neat. Here, let's crank it up even. Yeah, look at that. That is almost... That's about as accurate as I can get to what I'm looking at right now. That kind of intensity. That is pretty well. Well, okay, thanks for watching this. Much appreciated, everybody that pledges to the Dark Sword level on the blog or on the Patreon page. I appreciate that. And if you're seeing this and you haven't subscribed, maybe some future date or whatever, if you want to support the Patreon page, I always try to do new and different things like this. I try and squeeze as much as I can into every single lesson. So thanks again, and I will catch you on Dark Sword Episode 9.